In Israel and Palestine, protests for peace and against Israel's occupation are much more frequent than reporting in the mainstream media suggests. Many international and Israeli groups work in solidarity with Palestinians in various communities in the occupied territories. Since 1947, Palestinian landholdings have increasingly diminished. In the West Bank, Israel has mounted an aggressive campaign, demolishing Palestinian homes and villages and building separation walls. Because of the expansion of Jewish settlements and military occupation, there is virtually no free movement between the resulting small pockets of Palestinian communities. Despite all this, acts of peaceful resistance by Palestinians, internationals, and Israelis are part of everyday life. In 2003, at Masha, the government of Israel was in the process of clear-cutting olive groves and digging trenches to make way for their separation walls and fences. Masha is in the Salfit region of the West Bank, clearly nowhere near the armistice border known as the Green Line. At that time, a protest camp had been set up to oppose the building of the wall. Despite many demonstrations by Israelis and Palestinians, the walls and fences have continued to be erected.
I'd like to pull him.
Initially, they were building the wall a little bit inside the Green Line, taking the best land, best water.
Right.
And with the second phase, they're taking a whole chunk more. You have this trench,
Yes,
coiled barbed wire,
yes.
electrified fence. And every so often they'll have cameras so that they can monitor what is happening.
On this day, we meet a family waiting anxiously for the father to return from their farmland that now lies on the other side of the trench.
She has a land inside the wall, and she has a hope in the future to reach this land.
Once the fences are up, the farmers have been promised that a gate will give them access to their land.
The land is over there, their land is
Yes.
over there,
Yeah,
and their home is over here.
Apparently one time Nazir asked a soldier, why did you have to take the Mashalan? Because they didn't really need to. But the soldier replied that it was unthinkable that they would leave a hill in the hands of Palestinians, a hill that overlooks the settlement. So, no thought was given to the loss of income to Palestinians. It was their sole source of livelihood, and it's gone completely. And then, of course, if they don't use the land for a period of 3 years, invoking this old Ottoman law, it means they don't deserve it, and so they lose the land. They have title, but no access.
And after 3 years of non-use, because they can't access it,
They lose title to the land, yeah. There's another Ottoman law where after you have worked the land for 15 years, they deem that you deserved it, and therefore you got title to the land. But that part of the law is conveniently ignored.
A year later, the walls and fences at Masha are all in place. The repercussions for the Amer family, who are surrounded on all sides by fences and a wall, are severe.
This is the mother for the house.
Hello.
For the families.
Yeah. Thank you.
The Amer house is beside a Jewish settlement. They were pressured to move, but have refused, as this land has been in their family for many decades. Why is this house cordoned off like this?
They're at the edge of the village, and there used to be a roadblock here, and they were on the other side of the roadblock, and so basically without their house here, then the settlement could take more land. You can see their situation, right?
Now they are jailed in their house. There is one gate they can access, but if an outside gate is not opened by soldiers, they cannot go anywhere.
Okay, so there's this gate is the main gate to Masa, right? But then there's also this gate, so they're surrounded by fence on both sides. And then there's this concrete wall for no other purpose but to block their house from the rest of the village so that they can't see the village, and you know, they feel that they're in a prison, which they are. And this small gate, it's only for the family and they have the key.
Since the fences have gone up, access to land has been impeded. Sometimes the soldiers open the gates, sometimes they don't.
They tell the others we have 2 gates for in Misha, but really only 1 gate in Munira Amr house. But this is always, it's closed.
How many farmers are separated from their land here?
Maybe 1,000. They take all the land behind the settlement and take the olives for them, for the people on the settlement. And take the donkeys and take the olives. They wait until the people take the olives and take it from them.
In the South Hebron region, in the West Bank, there are many Palestinian villages. These communities are severely threatened by Israel's expansionist policies. At Susia, the intended path of the wall shifts, depending on legal court challenges. Israel's intent is to displace these Palestinian families who live in caves. At present, their fate is undetermined. Ezra Nawi, an Israeli plumber and activist, leads many international delegations to this region to assess the needs for a witnessing presence. On this trip, members from Christian peacemaker teams and Operation Dove accompany us. Hugo and other members of Operation Dove, a violence reduction group, have been staying with the Nawaja family. This family clan has had their cave dwellings destroyed, and they have been driven off their land.
6-7 years ago, they were living in tents and cave. They have sheep and so on. But the government declared the area archaeological area. So they were prevented to live there. Their houses were destroyed, and they moved here. At the beginning, they were escorted by the DCO, that is the police, so say the military police. But as soon as the DCO left, they had been attacked by the settlers, some young settlers, and they beat also 2 very old women. The one is on my back. The settlers say that she beat them. She is 70 years old. The settlers were 20, 25. We were going to take the water.
Sarah Nawaje, on a trip back to their water well, was attacked by the settlers.
They are near to the outpost.
The settlers, however, have charged her with assault, and her lawyer's representative is noting the details of her account.
But their homes were originally over there.
Yeah.
Though Israel declared the land an archaeological site, they subsequently allowed Jewish settlers to erect an outpost in the same location.
And there is British organization, belong to church or something, that give each family a toilet and a system of water. And even this, it's illegal, and to have to hide it, they wouldn't take air photo for this and come to destroy it, because it's illegal. You know, even meter square toilet without running water, of course, it's illegal. This is the toilet.
Uh-huh. So they built it.
Yeah.
But you mean they're hiding from aerial views,
Yeah.
so you can't tell that it's a toilet.
It's really a pleasure. This is what I found also on the roofs, and nobody using it.
Right,
I taking it and give them this part.
right.
And now when they want to wash hands or something else to toilet,
That's great.
it's I think it's very good.
What's this here?
This also was a cave that is destroyed.
Because the Nawaja family cannot access their wells, they are forced to find alternative water sources. But even these have been disallowed and destroyed by Israeli authorities.
They destroyed one, and they built another thing, and it's empty. And sometimes they have to pump water from another system to fill it, and it costs 2,200 shekel. For those people, it's a huge amount. It's a great deal of amount for water.
So they have to pay for the water?
Yeah. You see, but if they will have their permission, they can use their own water that's coming from rain. They don't need money for this. You as a Yael, me as a Ezra, cannot do much. But the idea is just to bring this news, this what's going here, to much people it's possible in the world, to see exactly the picture here. You see, to see how people really are living in under evil authorities. See, I want to show you.
On a second trip to Susia, we encounter a French and Australian delegation.
I heard about stories that they just
The education of internationals is an ongoing component of local organizing.
Believe me, the Palestinians know how to be happy. They created how to be happy. This is
we too with you.
and we implement the basic. Even in the desert, you can find the small, nice flowers. Even in the desert.
In Jinba, villagers have lived in caves for many years. However, the Israeli government is now claiming the land for military training.
This is the place of Jimba. It's divided into two sides, on this hill and another hill on the left side. In this place they live in caves. Until 1985, here was a big village with a mosque, with a swimming pool. It's crazy, but if you see now there's a desert, but in the past this was a village. The village was completely destroyed from the army. The first time in 1985, the second time in 1999. In 1999, all these people was pushed out of this land, completely pushed out. So after that, they go to the court, and the court said you can stay, but not forever. You can stay until that we will decide if you can stay or not, because there is the Israeli army. They ask this land to make a military training field camp. But they have a paper from the Turkish Empire that said this the land, them land here. but the Israeli government, they don't recognize this.
After leaving Jinba and going through the nearest checkpoint, we run into a flying checkpoint, just 1 kilometer down the road. Our camera presence is not appreciated.
Hello.
Hi.
תוריד את המצלמה. אל תגיד לי אל תיגע, תוריד את המצלמה, אסור לך לצלם, אל תשגע אותי, אסור לצלם.
Don't touch me.
מה אתה עושה? אל תגיד לי אל תיגע. אל תגיד לי אל תיגע, אל תגיד לי אל תיגע, אבל נפתח את התחת, תוריד את המצלמה, איפה שבר את המצלמה פה, אני שים פה.
Don't touch me.
תוריד מפה, תיקח את זה מהר מפה, אל תשגע אותי, אסור לצלם אבל. שיהיה פה, שלא לצלם.
Ezra and Khoresh are both Israelis. One can only imagine how Palestinians are treated.
אחר כמה ילדים הרגו בפיגוע ברכה. אפס, אתה משהביא אותך, אשכנזי מניאק, כנס לאוטו שאני בועט בך, כנס. בסדר.
The soldiers tell us to leave. In the meantime, they have punished all the Palestinians by forcing them out of their cars and separating the men from the women and children. We decide to stay and keep the camera running. Our presence clearly irritates the soldiers. Eventually, they give the Palestinians their ID cards back and allow them to leave. In Atwane, also in the South Hebron region, Jewish settlers regularly attack villagers and try to limit their access to local roads and fields. Christian peacemaker teams and Operation Dove have established a presence in the village to deter these attacks and to escort children on their way to school. In 2004, 2 American internationals, Kim Lamberty and Chris Brown, were attacked by settlers as they accompanied children along a disputed local route.
It was September 29th, and Chris and I were accompanying the kids to school, which, as I said, was part of our mission. And we were walking past the settlement toward Tuwani from the children's home, and 5 masked settlers came out of the trees of Havat Ma'on, which is an illegal settlement outpost located next to the settlement called Ma'on. So the attackers came out of the illegal outpost, and they were carrying sticks and chains, and they were masked, and the kids screamed and ran away, and the settlers let them go and came after me and Chris and beat us up both pretty badly. I had a broken arm at my elbow, and also they beat me above the elbow with chains, and they kicked my knee really badly, so I still have a bit of a knee problem. And then I also had cuts and bruises all over my face. And Chris had a punctured lung. They kicked him so hard in the chest that they kicked a hole in his lung. And he was hospitalized for 5 days. And he also had cuts and bruises all over his head and face.
On the long route, it takes the kids about 2 hours, they say. And the short route that goes by the settlement, where Kim and Chris were walking and where we have been trying to bring them, is about a 20-minute walk. Land on both sides of this road, at least for part of this stretch, probably about half of the walk, is land that used to belong to people who live in this village. So that would be a reason, I'm sure, why you wouldn't want people from this village walking back and forth there all the time. Have them walking through their own land that you've already taken, just...
So the mission now has changed to accompanying the shepherds as they take their sheep out to grazing land. A lot of this grazing land Palestinians have been afraid to use for 3 or 4 years or more because the settlers have wanted to claim that land for themselves. The other thing that's happened is that in those areas that the settlers want, that are outside of the settlement, they've gone and put poison in the land, poison that sheep are attracted to, so the sheep will eat it and then die.
There are 20 families here.
Yeah.
And once the disease has been discovered, they're not able to consume any milk or dairy.
No.
So how many sheep have they lost in this village totally?
In April 2005, at the time of our visit, 20 sheep had died and 80 were sick. Since then, the numbers have increased and more poison has been found in the grazing fields. Local farmers cannot sell the meat, make cheese, or feed their children.
The plan is there's a press conference at 11 with the Hebron governor and with a representative from United Nations and some shepherds from the village of Tuwani and Mfakra to talk about how their land was poisoned.
أنا يعني قبل ما أنا أترك الحديث لإخواني المتخصصين في هذا الأمر حتى يوضحوا هذه الأمور. هذه عينة من السموم اللي وضعوها للأغنام في هذه المناطق اللي أنا ذكرتها.
Villagers and internationals took the poison to the local police station.
We have a problem here. There is a poison. The police don't want to take.
But the police have refused to investigate, claiming that these incidents are outside their jurisdiction.
I don't want to touch him. So tell me.
This is the poison from the
Women in black hold vigils every Friday in several places throughout Israel. In West Jerusalem, they have been demonstrating for over 17 years. Despite their non-violent presence, they often meet with highly charged reactions.
Are the Arabs killing us? Give me an answer. Are the Arabs killing us? So are you going there too? 1 second. You're using democracy here. Are you going there too? Are you going and demonstrating against their terrorist killing of my children? No, that you don't do. The only time you do?
Your son wouldn't have to be in the army. There would be peace. There would be peace if you wouldn't put this stupid sign up. You are the cause of war. You are the cause of war. You bury your own people. You bury your own people. You bury Even the Palestinians know they are killing their own people. The
So this is Beit Arabiya, the home of Salim and Arabiya Shawamre, a home that we've rebuilt 4 times as a political act of resistance to the occupation. This is the 5th home. We built it last year, and because when they got a demolition order last year, because of the outcry in the world, the Israeli government decided not to demolish it. The family came